This Rhode Island home is over 100 years old. Under the worn floorboards, something much stranger than creaks and drafts was waiting. It's known as the ghost house around the world. Well known, feared, and always up for debate. But no matter how many stories you've heard, some parts were too scary to be shown on the big screen until now. There are deeper facts hidden behind the stories. Not just in old books. The soft whispers and flowery smell quickly turned into something that no one could ignore. It was heard by one child. Someone else saw it. But what they didn't find is still scary them. What scares you more about the story, the ghosts or the silence they left behind? They might not scream, but do they wake up? Even though the answers don't scream, they do ring true. The house before they met the Perrons. Even before the Perron family moved into the now famous home in Harrisville, Rhode Island, it had a bad name. It was known as the Old Arnold Estate. A disturbing picture of a series of terrible events that happened on or near the estate was painted by historical records and local legends. 2 people were hanged and 1 was poisoned to death, 2 people drowned, and 4 men were said to have frozen to death. Additionally, a farmhand is said to have killed Prudence Arnold, an 11-year-old girl. But it's important to remember that Prudence died in Oxbridge, Massachusetts, not on the Arnold estate. This is something that people often get wrong, though. 8 generations of the Arnold family lived on the estate, and many people died there in a variety of ways. One case that stands out is that of Mrs. John Arnold, who allegedly killed herself in the barn when she was 93 years old. Even though these deaths have been recorded, some doubters say that the pattern of bad luck could just be a coincidence or could have been skewed by generations of sharing the story. It's important to note that oral history can sometimes mix up fact and myth, especially when local superstitions and changing community memory make it worse. In the 1800s, Bathsheba Sherman was also accused of witchcraft and killing children, which made the stories about the estate more complicated. Most stories about her connect her to the Arnold estate, but historical records show that Bathsheba lived on a farm next door, since she had no direct ties to the house. Although it was made up, her story added to the legend of the house because it was so shocking, and generations of people have been scared of it ever since she was in the 2013 horror movie The Conjuring. The past of the estate is being looked at closely by both paranormal fans and people who don't believe in them lately. Some people are against the supernatural claims because they think that the stories about the estate's ghosts have been made more dramatic by Hollywood and the public's desire for supernatural stories. While others are sure that strange things happened on the land in the past that can't be explained. No matter what you think, the old Arnold house continues to cause debate because it is where real-life tragedy and supernatural stories meet. The house wasn't done telling its story when the next family moved in. The early days of the Perron. There were 5 daughters and Roger Perron living at the Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island, in January 1971. The family was enchanted by the property's rustic charm and large, 8.5-acre landscape. The 14-room colonial home with its old-fashioned beauty seemed perfect for the peaceful country life they had dreamed of. But within days of arriving, strange things started happening that made them question their dreams of peace and quiet in the country. The last words of a neighbor, "Leave the lights on at night," seemed strange at first, but they would later feel frighteningly prescient. During the first few weeks they lived there, the family experienced strange but seemingly harmless incidents. Things moved from where they were before. Unknown things like tools and household items went missing and then showed up again, and doors opened and shut without any clear reason. Carolyn was especially confused when her broom kept moving and little piles of dirt started to form in areas that had just been cleaned. This was a bothersome habit that quickly became a regular occurrence. Even their normally fearless dog wouldn't go near some parts of the house, especially the cellar door. It was like their dog could naturally sense something that humans couldn't. The kids, who were all different ages and personalities, started to see things that, by any reasonable measure, shouldn't be there. People always went after their little daughter Cindy. She would put something down one minute and then find it somewhere else, which caused confusion and fights. There was a lot of tension in the nights, with whispers going back and forth in the halls and the sound of footsteps on wooden floors far away. The girls looked for each other's comfort more and more, and when they were scared, they often shared a bed. Andrea Perrone, the oldest daughter, remembered waking up to the sound of her scared sister crying, which was a wake-up call about the growing fear in the family. For a while, the family's excuses started to fall apart. At first, these things were just seen as quirks of an old house, but now they seemed planned and intentional. Early disturbances set the stage for paranormal behavior that got worse and more hostile. Before they knew it, their move to a beautiful rural area had turned into a scary, tangled wilderness full of strange and unexplainable events. For the parents, their early years at the Arnold estate were not the beginning of a story, they were the start of a nightmare they never meant to face. The good spirits that live in Harrisville. In the first few weeks after moving into the Arnold estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island, with the Perron family, the house had a strange but not immediately dangerous vibe. These 5 daughters of a parent, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, soon started talking about meeting what they called caring and unseen beings. They came to think of these things as caretakers because they acted in ways that seemed oddly affectionate. The oldest girl, Andrea, said that one ghost would visit the girls before bed and kiss them on the forehead and gently tuck them in. At first, Cindy Perrone thought the person who came in every night was their mother until she smelled the nice scent of fruit and flowers, which was very different from their mother's usual scent of ivory soap. These conversations were not scary like the ones people usually have when they believe in ghosts. What the kids felt was like the house or something inside it was quietly watching over them. Sometimes, their toys were moved, but not violently. Instead, they were put somewhere else, almost as if it were a game. There were whispers in empty rooms and doors that opened on their own. Still, there was no evil in these events. Later, Andrea said that she thought at the time that it felt like they were living with ghosts who just wanted to get along. The fact that these first meetings were friendly gave the family a false sense of security. Even the family dog seemed to know about the people who lived in the house but couldn't be seen. He stayed out of some rooms and was careful in others, but he didn't seem scared. Then he did something that would become normal for him. The Perrones came to think of these things as ghosts from the past. Maybe the ghosts of people who lived there before or the guardians of the land who chose to stay. Early encounters that were mostly about the kids did create a strange but comforting rhythm in the home, where supernatural things were quietly recognized and accepted as normal parts of daily life. But this peaceful living together did not last. Later, Andrea Perrone would say that the ghosts they thought were protecting them may have been pushed out or overthrown by something much worse. It wasn't long before the events that were supposed to be comforting turned into ones that were full of fear, anger, mental abuse, and everything in between. Along the family's trip, there would be a clear separation between benign watchers and malevolent forces. But for a short time that they will always remember warmly, the Perrones lived in a house where the supernatural felt strangely friendly, not scary, but like a presence of love and care that couldn't be seen. There are 7 guards in the wall. When young Cindy Perron told her sister Andrea about a strange and scary message, it was one of the scariest parts of the Perron family's haunting. Cindy said she heard sounds that didn't belong to anyone, saying that 7 dead soldiers are buried in the walls. Unlike the previous ghostly events, this statement was very specific, which made the whole family very nervous. It wasn't just what was said in the message. That was how clearly it was said and how sure Cindy seemed to be that it was true. This caused a mental change in how they thought about the haunting, making them think that it wasn't just ghosts that were there, but also a dark past built into the house itself. The family had a scary feeling about their surroundings when they thought about the possibility of burying bodies inside the house. The claim was just believable enough to be scary because of Rhode Island's long and difficult colonial history and its part in early American wars. The thought that these ghosts might be war-dead people who were restless and might be angry made the fear that was already building in the house even worse. It wasn't just a spooky place. It looked more and more like a graveyard that was trying to look like a farmhouse. The fact that Cindy's emotions and mental health changed after the event showed how bad the effect was. She became noticeably more tense and shy. She was tormented by a constant fear that kept her awake at night. The quiet finding stayed with her for a long time, filling her with fear that spread to every part of her life. Her siblings could also feel a change in her mood, which made things even more tense in the family. For this family, it wasn't just a dream. They were getting a message, which could have been the start of the bad things that would happen next. No physical proof was ever found to prove that there were remains in the walls, but the damage had already been done to people's minds. Cindy's ordeal and the emotional pain it caused helped make the Arnold estate famous for a long time. The story of the 7 soldiers, even though there was no proof, became one of the scariest in Pyron's inheritance. It added to the idea that the house wasn't really haunted by lost souls, but by ancient tragedies waiting to be recognized. Agreed upon. Bathsheba the Good. Bathsheba Sherman, whose real name was Bathsheba Thur and who was born in Rhode Island in 1812, has become one of the most controversial characters in the haunted house story. Many people, including those who saw the movie The Conjuring, think of her as a witch who killed herself after giving her baby as a sacrifice to Satan and cursing her land. This description, on the other hand, comes more from tradition than from written history. Bathsheba was a real person who lived in the Harrisville area and married a farmer named Judson Sherman. The couple had kids, including a son named Herbert. They also went through a lot of bad things in their lives, like some of their kids dying too soon, which was sad but common in the 1800s. The most persistent story about Bathsheba is about the child she was said to be caring for and whose death is still a mystery. According to reports, the child died in a strange way. A medical exam showed a puncture wound at the base of the skull. Even though the proof was weak, Bathsheba was quickly the subject of rumors and suspicion in the area. Because of superstition and grief, the community's growing fear and mistrust made her a scary figure. However, they were never officially charged or tried in court. This meant that the charges had time to grow and turn into stories of witchcraft and evil. In the end, her name became connected to other parts of New England's complicated past. Others said she was related to Mary Town East, who was one of the women who were killed during the Salem witch trials. This made her look even more like a scary woman. This family tree link can't be proven in the records, though, and scholars aren't sure if it's real. In modern media, Bathsheba is portrayed as an evil spirit, which has only added to a made-up story about her life that has little to do with the facts. As far as we know, the real woman was a troublesome but not particularly bad person, very different from the evil person she's been accused of becoming. Over the last few decades, historians and scholars from the area have tried to make Bathsheba's story more balanced. Researchers have looked very closely at public records, burial records, and property records and have not found any solid proof linking her to any crime, let alone witchcraft. It's possible that the Perron family did experience what they thought was a supernatural presence, but that they were actually just making up stories about Bathsheba. Her reputation is now somewhere between scary truth and scary fiction. It shows how rumors, fear, and the lasting power of a ghost story can change real people. People still don't agree on what happened in Bathsheba, but one woman in that house started having her own fears. A mother who is being pushed around. Carolyn Pyron, the matriarch of the Pyron family, started having more and more disturbing and personal experiences in the Harrisville farmhouse in the early 1970s. Things that started out as vague and easy to ignore, like creaking floors, things going missing, and drafts that couldn't be explained quickly turned into more drafts and then more scary events. Carolyn woke up with deep marks all over her body that she couldn't explain. She also kept talking about how unsettling it felt to be watched, especially in her bedroom at night. The most scary thing for her were her dreams of a ghostly woman, which she thought was Bathsheba Sherman, standing at the foot of her bed and making mean threats. She had these experiences that made her different from the rest of her family, who were having more general paranormal experiences. What was happening to Carolyn's body and mind was getting worse as the supernatural events got worse. She got more and more tired, lost, and emotionally stressed. Her health got worse, with depression that no one could explain and random injuries that had no clear cause. Her behavior also changed, which made Roger, her husband, worry that the house was having a much deeper effect on his wife. He called the famous ghost hunters Ed and Lorraine Warren out of desperation. When the couple got there, Lorraine, who calls herself a clairvoyant, saw right away that there was a dark presence focused on Carolyn and warned her that she might be the main target of the evil force that was living in the house. Carolyn was going through the worst of it during a séance Warren held in the basement of the house. The séance didn't quickly bring about anything that could be controlled by anyone. Instead, it was aimed directly at the creature. Andrea Perrone, who was lucky enough to see the whole thing, said that her mother seemed to be taken over by some force. Carolyn started to talk in a language that Andrea didn't understand. Her voice was messed up and her voice was distorted and hard to understand. Her chair was lifted into the air and then thrown violently around the room after a short time. According to Roger, it was scary enough for him to demand that the practice end right away and that the Warrens leave, since they were making things worse instead of better. They didn't have the money or the means to buy a new home for another 10 years because of the stress. Carolyn, who had been through the most during the haunting, would obviously have emotional and mental scars that would last a lifetime. She said the house was a portal that looked like a farmhouse, which means it was a place where dark forces could pass through that were so dark that humans couldn't even understand them. There is no doubt that the experience added a very personal touch to the tragedy of the Perron family. It turned the ghost into something much more evil on a human level. Something went wrong with the séance. In the fall of 1973, the Perrone family's haunting got even scarier when Ed and Lorraine Warren went to their Harrisville home and suggested a séance to deal with the increasingly hostile ghostly activity. The session was meant to directly target the dark force that was thought to be hurting Carolyn Pond. Lorraine, who is psychic, said she could feel that something bad had attached itself to Carolyn and was eating off of her energy. Even though the family had experienced some strange and scary things before, their choice to directly interact with the entity through spiritual means was a huge step up in how they dealt with the haunting. The oldest daughter, Andrea Perrone, didn't follow the rules and stayed upstairs. Instead, she watched the séance in secret from a nearby hiding place. After seeing what she did, she would always be afraid. Her story goes that as the rite went on, her mother suddenly started talking in a language that no one understood, with a weird, angry voice. Soon after, Caroline's chair jumped off the ground, throwing her across the basement. Any doubt that something strange was going on was shattered by the violence of the moment. Even though Andrea was only a child, she thought the scene was horrifying and feared that her mother might be lost for good at that moment. Lorraine Warren confirmed feeling a strong and evil force. She spoke out about the problem in public and rarely talked about the specifics of what she saw. She did not say anything about the facts of the séance, though. Now, a guess about silence. Did it happen so long ago that it was too painful to remember, or did the Warren not understand certain things? Both paranormalists and skeptics have doubts about this. How can something so important and well documented be so hard to remember? Even so, the secret stays. There were strong reports of more ghostly activities in that house after the séance. But it looked like the worst of them were over. As a result, the Perrones lived in one house until 1980. Still having trouble because of money problems. The séance may not have ended the hauntings, but it did have a big effect on the story at that point, and that effect would later change how the family was told in public. Andrea Perrone wrote about this whole, complicated experience in her book series, House of Darkness, House of Light. This story is very personal and full of details. Without a doubt, the séance itself is full of fear and mystery. The real hide and clap incident is one of the scariest and most debated parts of scare house stories. The Perron family had a lot of scary experiences, but one that happened during a game of hide and seek left a long impression on the minds of everyone, especially young Cindy Perron. Cindy chose to hide in a wooden pine box kept in the family barn one afternoon. There were no locks or latches on the box, and it looked like a safe, if dusty, place to hide. Once Cindy got inside, though, she was stuck for no reason. The lid wouldn't move, no matter how hard she pushed or kicked it. She screamed for help out of fear, but the silence of the barn drowned out her cries. It didn't take Cindy long to figure out how to open the sealed box when her sister Nancy found her. A move that seemed to go against what the box was doing before. Even more scary was the fact that there was no mechanical reason for the lid to have stayed closed. Cindy was sure she hadn't closed it all the way, and there was no latch inside. For the girls and their family, the event felt like a lot more than a regular kid mistake. In a house that was already full of strange sounds and ghostly figures, this moment stood out as being disturbingly planned. Cindy felt the reaction right away and strongly. What should have been a happy, carefree day turned into something that would stay with the family forever and make them even more afraid of the house. Games like hide and seek that were meant to be fun were no longer games. They looked too dangerous, maybe even dangerous for the Perron kids. Home became a place where the house played tricks on them by changing their routines and making them think they weren't safe. The event made Carolyn and Roger's worries grow, making them more serious about what the kids were going through and more determined to get outside help for them. Skeptics, on the other hand, will see it as just another sad case of a falling tree or a coincidence of the house getting older. There are a lot of strange things going on around the event that makes it stand out. There are moving objects, voices that don't have bodies, sudden cold drafts, and disturbing dreams. If you think Cindy's capture was just an accident, you would have to make assumptions about things that aren't true. What seemed like a harmless game could become something bad in that house. The clapping and hide and seek scene in The Conjuring grew out of something much more personal and scary. When the Perrons got to the house. Even though the Perron family had left the Arnold estate years before because it was haunted, they still thought that the bad energy connected to it and especially the spirit of Bathsheba Sherman would not let them go. The oldest daughter, Andrea Perron, has told the public about how her family is still being affected by ghosts years after they left Harrisville. These stories weren't just about dreams or memories. They included real noises that made the family believe they were still being watched. As they tried to start over in a new place, strange and scary things kept happening to them like a ghost. One very scary thing happened in 2012 while they were making The Conjuring, the Hollywood movie version of their story. While Andrea and her sisters were visiting the movie set in Wilmington, North Carolina, a sudden, strong gust of wind hit the area and stopped filming. The wind knocked over lighting stands and scattered equipment all over the place. Right then, Carolyn Pyron broke her hip at home in Georgia, many miles away from the set visit. She had chosen not to go. People in the family were scared by the strange timing and thought it wasn't just an accident. As soon as Carolyn heard about the chaos on set, she is said to have whispered, "Bathsheba does not want to be exposed." For the Perrons, this wasn't just one strange thing. Andrea has talked about other events that have happened over the years. Things moving without a reason, the temperature dropping in a closed room, and a general sense of being watched by someone who can't be seen. These events made them even more sure that the presence they felt in Rhode Island was not just a ghost locked up in the house. It seemed like Bathsheba had a deeper, even spiritual connection with them. She kept reminding them of her presence no matter how far they went or how long it had been. Even now, the Pyron family's story still gets strong reactions from people who believe in residual hauntings and people who don't believe such claims. What the Pyrots actually went through, though, was the fear, which ended thankfully when the Arnold estate closed for good. The movie only showed a small part of their first experience, but their stalking continued in quieter, less obvious ways. Their story is a cold reminder that for some people, the past doesn't stay in the past, and whatever they went through in that dusty old farmhouse may have come back to haunt them their whole lives. The Perrons' faith is strengthened by the psychological idea of post-traumatic haunting, which says that intense stress and emotional trauma can manifest as a persistent supernatural awareness. In an interview, parapsychologist Dr. Barry Taff said, "Sometimes it's not the house that's haunted, it's the people." This means that unresolved trauma and fear can connect to people and change how they perceive new places in a strange way. The parents were trying to move on when someone else walked into the story and changed it in a way they didn't mean to. The Conjuring House is entering a new era. When Norma Sutcliffe and her husband Jerry Hrich bought the Arnold estate in 1987, they had no idea that it had one of the worst names in the history of the supernatural. The couple lived quietly on the property for years, enjoying its colonial charm and quiet country setting. But that peace was broken when The Conjuring came out in 2013. Their house went from being a private residence to a public obsession in what seemed like an instant. A lot of fans, ghost hunters, and people just interested in the land started going there, and some even broke the law at night. Once their safe place, it became a place where people from all over the world could watch people be fascinated by the strange. Sutcliffe has called herself a skeptic, but she hasn't ruled out the strange things that have happened to her over the years. She has said that she has heard footsteps, seen lights flicker, and heard voices that don't seem to have bodies. She thinks that these events are probably caused by natural events, old structures, or psychological suggestions. The Perrons thought the house was haunted by ghosts, but Sutcliffe has tried to look at each event with a logical mind. Even so, she couldn't deny that the movie had a real effect on her safety and privacy. She sued Warner Brothers because she was angry that they used a picture of her house without her permission, which put her safety at risk and caused her mental pain. Vowed to tell the difference between sensationalized fiction and real events. Sutcliffe did a lot of study on the property's history. Along with local reporters and researchers, she looked into what really happened with the Perron haunting and disagreed with many of the claims made in the movie and Andrea Perron's books. Her study showed that the house did have a long and sometimes sad history, but that a lot of the stories about ghosts were not based on solid evidence. It wasn't that Sutcliffe thought the Pans' experiences were impossible. Instead, he thought that memory, trauma, and folklore might have played a big role in making them happen. The house was sold again in 2019, this time to Corey and Jennifer Heinsohn, a husband and wife team who investigate ghosts. The Heinsohns, unlike Sutcliffe, were okay with the house having a reputation for being haunted and let people stay there overnight and take walks. Even though they have also said they see strange things, the way they run the house shows a bigger culture trend. The line between myth and advertisement has become less clear. Her addition to the history of the Conjuring House is unique not because it tells scary stories, but because it demands facts, proof, and common sense, offering a realistic view in a sea of supernaturalism. Kendall Welpton, co-director of the 2021 documentary The Sleepless Unrest, tells a different story. He and his team lived in the Conjuring House for 2 weeks for the filming of that film. If you look at the project through Welpton's eyes, you'll notice that there was a heavy feeling in the air that never really went away. Even though they didn't see any clear signs of ghosts, he was adamant that being in the house, especially in the early morning when it was quiet, had an effect on their minds. This is typical of paranormal tourism as a whole, where experiences often combine personal expectation with tense situations in the environment. People are interested in the house for more than just the Perron family story. It has become a place where belief, fear, and legend all come together. From this broader point of view, the past of the haunted house isn't just about what happened, it's also about what people bring with them when they go inside. Thanks for seeing. If this story scared you, please like it and let us know what you think. Also, don't forget to join for more